Santa Fe, New Mexico is a legendary city. It is one of the oldest cities in the United States, with a longer and more complex history than most places in the country, so there have been plenty of opportunities for ghostly encounters and miracles to happen. In this video we'll highlight a few interesting locations of both miracles and ghosts. Perhaps the best place to start is the Loretto Chapel, home to a famous miraculous spiral staircase. This Gothic Revival chapel right on the Santa Fe Trail was completed in 1878 for the Sisters of Loretto, who operate a Catholic school for young women here. The chapel was based on Saint Chapelle in Paris, which is very evident with the buttresses, spires, and stained glass windows. It was used as a chapel for the Loretto Academy until it closed in 1968. Thankfully it was saved, unlike the rest of the school. Inside, there is a marvelous freestanding spiral staircase leading up to the choir loft. This staircase is so famous because it is so mysterious. The chapel is fairly small, and clearly they didn't have the room for a normal sized staircase to get up there, but the sisters also didn't want to climb a ladder, so they did what they do best and prayed for a solution. The sisters performed a novena, or prayer, to Saint Joseph, the patron saint of carpentry, and sure enough, at the end of 9 straight days of prayer, an unknown man appeared and offered to build a spiral staircase, with the condition that he be provided total privacy. Over the next 3 months, he built this 20-foot tall spiral staircase using very simple tools. It was apparently holding itself up without any other form of support besides the bottom step. Truly an engineering marvel at the time. The staircase was also found to be built of a non-native wood, a form of spruce that couldn't be found anywhere around Santa Fe. There was not even a single nail used in the staircase. As soon as the mystery man finished, he vanished without receiving any payment. The sisters attempted to locate him and figure out his identity, but they found nothing. They came to believe it may have been Saint Joseph himself, or at least someone sent by him. It is pretty remarkable. It makes 2 full rotations, all while having no central support. The railing isn't original, it was added about 10 years later. I guess the nuns in their big robes would crawl up and down the staircase on their hands and knees before that. And eventually a brace was added in for extra support, since it is getting pretty old. Now there is a different version of the story in which they know the identity of the man who built it, that he was murdered and purposefully forgotten, but that is a story for another time. We'll stick to the miracle legend in this video. The chapel is absolutely beautiful on the inside. There is a big carved marble altar. There are also some beautiful stained glass windows in here. Here are the Stations of the Cross. The chapel is a Santa Fe landmark and on the National Register of Historic Places. The Loretto Chapel is definitely worth a quick visit in Santa Fe. It's fascinating and majestic, although they keep raising the entry price. When I was here a little over a year ago it was $5, this time it was $7. They also have an extensive gift shop selling all sorts of religious symbols and statues. The chapel is actually connected to a mini mall and hotel. Now I am going to embark on a ghost tour of Santa Fe. I was actually on a ghost tour with a local guide, But I didn't want to film the guide's customized tour, so I'll just show some of the haunted locations and tell a little bit about them. I'll also show some cool stuff I see along the tour route. A section of this building, now home to the Collected Works bookstore, was part of the old Santa Fe County Jail, and the most infamous former inmate was Billy the Kid himself. I also found a cigar store Indian nearby. There's also a Ganesh statue outside the smoke and vape shop. Many buildings downtown have potential ghost hauntings and reports of paranormal activity. Even though a lot of these buildings aren't that old, most of these supposed ghosts and spirits have connections to the sites of their former dwellings and businesses from centuries ago. This house was known as the Grant Corner Inn. It was built in 1905 and has a tragic history. The first couple to live here bore a sickly son, who was known to scream and bang the walls in his room upstairs. The father died pretty soon after moving in, and the boy eventually died here too. He still supposedly haunts his room upstairs. A caretaker who lived in that boy's room experienced everything from freezing air and mysterious mist to aromas of rotting meat and inexplicable noises. There's a bunch of fish heads poking out of the ground here. Santa Fe definitely has its share of interesting public art. This is a statue of Staff Sergeant Leroy A. Petrie, a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient for exceptional heroism in Afghanistan. Here's a statue of St. Francis of Assisi. That's the historic federal courthouse. It's apparently haunted. Here's an out-of-place Tudor church in Santa Fe.
Two-story sticking up there. So Julia is our most famous ghost, and she's been in her house.
This is the La Posada Resort, which envelops the historic Staab Mansion. The second floor of the house is still visible up there, and the room behind that farthest left window is the most haunted room in Santa Fe. It is reportedly haunted by the ghost of Julia Staab. Julia was originally from Germany, but came to America at 16 and eventually married Abraham Staab, a Santa Fe Trail merchant who permanently settled here and was perhaps the wealthiest man in the territory. He promised to build the most expensive and extravagant house in New Mexico, and so he did. Julia apparently never liked this Wild West town, and she was often depressed. She did try to act as a socialite, with some success early on. She was apparently friends with the Archbishop Lamy. These are actually the original front steps and porch of the Staab home, preserved inside the hotel. This is the front entrance to the haunted Staab house. And this is the restored foyer of the Victorian mansion. Guests can actually stay in the upstairs rooms. Julia's 7th child died at a few weeks old, and she had a few more unsuccessful pregnancies after that, so she became severely depressed and at one point stayed in her upstairs room for 2 weeks straight, without sleeping or eating, and she was never the same after that. Her hair reportedly turned to white during that time. She died in a recluse up there in 1896. There is a conspiracy that Abraham Staab murdered her to improve his social standing in the community by not having a deranged wife. Apparently, Presidents Rutherford B. Hayes and Grover Cleveland both stayed at this home and were entertained in this very room. Many hotel workers and guests over the years attest that Julia's spirit is here and very active. There have been many reports of seeing her on this staircase, usually standing at the top. She is reportedly most active in her former bedroom, now room 256 at this hotel. Unfortunately, someone is staying in there tonight, so I can't go in, but apparently many guests have a rough time sleeping in there. The ghost of Julia Staab is legendary here in Santa Fe, and I may just have to try and stay in her room sometime. Here in the resort, they have Julia's Social Club, a restaurant based on the resident ghost. Also, there is some cool art in this hotel. This is Marion Hall, the Santa Fe Sanatorium built in 1910. I think it goes without saying that the sanatorium is most likely haunted. Here is the Cathedral Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi at dusk. The last stop is going to be the La Fonda on the Plaza Hotel, a very historic Harvey hotel and one of the crown jewels of Santa Fe. This hotel structure was built in 1922, so it's just now 100 years old, but there have been many inns located here on this prime piece of real estate at the end of the Santa Fe Trail, reportedly going back to 1607. So yes, it is haunted. Over the past 400 years, there have been many public hangings on this site, including mob lynchings, as well as various cowboy gunfights in the Wild West days. There's one true story that in 1867, the Chief Justice of New Mexico Territory, John P. Slough, was shot to death in the hotel on this site by a member of the territorial legislature, after Slough called him a liar and a thief. The legislator was acquitted for murdering the Chief Justice. There have been sightings of a man similar to Judge Slough still roaming the hotel at night with his big black cloak, specifically in this area that is now the restaurant. There is also a story that a businessman lost his company's money in a card game at the gambling hall in the Exchange Hotel, which was located here, so he leaped to his death down a well. And apparently in this hotel building, a bride was murdered by her groom in what is now the wedding suite, and she still haunts that 5th floor area. Now I actually stayed here at La Fonda on this visit. It is a really cool place. No ghost encounters to report, but I did film a much more in-depth video on this hotel's history that will be linked in the description. So those were some of the legendary ghost and miracle stories of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Very fascinating stuff. If you enjoyed this video, then please like it, share it, and subscribe. I usually don't do haunted ghost tours or paranormal stuff, but let me know if you'd like to see more. I usually film videos on unique historic places, museums, roadside attractions, national parks, and much more all across the country, including many here in Santa Fe showing off the individual attractions and museums. So take a look at some of my other videos if you're interested. Thanks for watching.